Good afternoon, everyone. How's your day going so far? How's your day going so far? There we go. I'm Peter Giannetti, and if you've been at our education program throughout the week, you're probably sick of me by now. But this is a highlight. I look forward to this every year, as so many of you that are returning do. And those of you who've never been to this session before, have never heard Lee Eiseman talk about what she talks about, we'll get into that in a second. You are in for a treat. But I want to do a little pop quiz for a second. This is not scientific, because I've just thought about it right now, but I realized something before we started today. So I'm going to ask you a question. What is the first thing, by far, that every shopper, every consumer notices, whether they're online, whether they're in a store, whether they're wherever they buy this stuff? What is the very first thing they see? Color. It is the very first thing that everyone sees. They begin forming impressions about their purchase that very moment. Is it the right color? Is it the wrong color? Can I live with it? Can I live without it? How long is it going to last? Will it be in my kitchen for 25 years, like my mother's avocado green refrigerator was? Did you have an avocado green refrigerator? Of course. Color is the essence of sort of what defines us as consumers. It's part of our identity. And as I was telling people earlier, we can tend to get caught up in price. There was a question in one of the earlier sessions about price sensitivity, and I kind of turned that word into price aware. Consumers are very price aware now. It is a significant consideration, but it's not an insurmountable hurdle, because the value of a product, as I said earlier, is not what its price is, it's how much it's worth to you. And so as an industry, we have a responsibility as we're looking for a renewed period of growth after a very difficult and challenging time where we've tried to live transactionally. We just tried to sell more stuff. But color is different. Color is not something you sell. Color is something that inspires. It's something we capture. It's a mood. It's a tone. It's an idea. And as an industry, we have an opportunity right now to build value into our products to a very price-aware consumer who is going to be very willing to move up to what might become a new standard of pricing in our business, as long as we give them reasons to do so. And color is one of those reasons, if not maybe the first thing that comes to mind. With that, I'm so pleased to announce that Lee Eiseman has been here for, we can't figure it out, like we say 27 years, 26 years, but she's back. Lee Eiseman is the executive director of the Pantone Color Institute. She'll talk a little bit about the Pantone color watch display over there. She brings insights to us on color and design and style, what's out there. She takes a look at the world of color from outside the world of housewares and then brings it right back into the world of housewares. There's no one that knows this business, the business of color, better than Lee Eiseman. And with that, I'd love to welcome Lee Eiseman to the stage. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah. Wow, what an introduction, huh? I've got to follow that act. Thank you, Peter. You gave a lot of what I usually start out with. And of course, I'm filled with the statistics of why color works the way that it does. That's what we do at Pantone Color Institute. We look at the emotional aspect of color. We look at the psychological aspect of color. It's not just what the hot color is. And it's not just about what the trend is. There has to be a reason behind it. And that's where our trends come from that rationale. Now, the title of the Pantone View Home Forecast, as you see up on your screens, is sensibility, a fusion of two words that means the ability to understand, to recognize, to value, to act, to react, especially as it relates to the sense of sight, the sense of sound, the sense of aromas and scents, which I far prefer to the sense of smell. Smell's not a very pretty word. I prefer scents and aromas. The sense of taste and the sense of touch. And speaking of touch and tactility, we look for the sensorial clues. That's what we're talking about when I talk about what we do at Pantone Color Institute. The choice for the color of the year, and I'm going to start out with that today because sometimes people will question, why did you come up with the color of the year that you did? And this year it's created a little bit of consternation, having white Cloud Dancer as the color of the year, the cubes you see behind you, but I'll get into the reasoning for that. Now, when we look back on the last few years, when the pandemic was officially over in 2023, it was the sense of touch, the need for comfort and tactility that was frequently mentioned as a trend driver for the following year. When we do our research, we are very in tune with what the consumer is telling us, what they are feeling, what they are needing. Plush products were recommended as research-backed studies showed the benefits of deep touch pressure as a wellness tool, not only for kids. Oh, is that sweet? You always have to have a picture of a baby or puppies or kittens in your talks, right? But also for adults as well. And this is Marisa Hargitay, who's very much involved in a cause that involves the use of a plush pillow. We opted for a peach tone, nestled between pale yellow and warm pink, as it spoke to the nurturing and comforting quality that people were telling us they were seeking. The Pantone name, Peach Fuzz, certainly is inherently understood as tender to the touch. It's soft, it's gentle, an embracing color that suggests warmth, contentment, and cocooning. We thought this was a fabulous example of cocooning. A quiet place to rest and reflect. There were many, many indicators in the design world that informed our choice of Peach Fuzz for 2024. Among them, the beauty field. Of course, we always have to look there. Certainly apparel, both in casual and special occasions, especially if it's worn by a celebrity at one of the award shows, because millions of eyes across the world watch those colors. There's increased publicity as a result of that. We certainly saw more peach coming into interior design and home furnishings. And in ceramics and giftware, peach tones have become more prevalent and creatively combined color-wise. Now, one of the reasons I mention this to you is that we know we're far less of a throwaway society than we've been before. And when people fall in love with a color, they want to use it for, for a time. And one of the things that consumers often say to us is, we want to be able to keep integrating those colors. And so when we think in terms of our color of the year, we always think in terms of how do we integrate with what we've seen before. And as you look at some of the combinations that are up here on your screen, there's some beautiful integrations with the color peach. When used in an unexpected application, these tones, like peach, or any other color, gain even more attention in the marketplace when they are used in unexpected applications, and certainly a motorbike was an unexpected application, perhaps even a vintage bathtub. Color used out of the usual context becomes more memorable. The staging of this shot, I think, is exceptional. Note the wall art, both in the written word and the coordinated color, helps to deliver the message. The aspirational selling points: relax, soak, unwind. The messaging of the color of the year for 2025, Mocha Mousse, also engaged the senses, evolving into the sense of taste, literally and figuratively. It was a reminder in an overscheduled and frenetic world, it was time to allow ourselves a moment for a thoughtful, not thoughtless, but thoughtful indulgence. An unpretentious and staple shade, it can take us from casual dining to taste-appealing elegance, like we see in this chocolate martini, if you can believe that. Within fashion and interiors, mousse extends our perception of the brown family that ranges from humble and rustic, to an aspirational, updated, and earthy refinement. The beautiful wall art by Maritza Lisa of Society 6 is a perfect example of infusing mocha mousse with a subtle elegance that presents a discreet and tasteful, sensual glamour. And her white hair takes us into the color of the year, and that would be Pantone's Cloud Dancer. A billowy, airy white hue, it opens up space for creativity and cohesiveness, allowing our imaginations to drift so that new insights can emerge and take shape. Now, this is an important point, the rationale behind Cloud Dancer. Now, there were people that said to us, but you know, white's not a color. Well, I would have to defer from that view because psychologically, white is seen as a presence. We know that there are certain feelings, certain emotions that are tied to white, and this is what we were looking at. I'm going to show you another image that's going to really bring it to mind. And in addition to that, it's that clean slate. It opens up the vistas where our creativity can come through. When we've got a lot of cacophony going on in the world around us, we need that clean slate. And so here's what I thought was a perfect image. Revisiting our senses, we reflected on the need for something quieting that would quiet the white noise, the quieting white noise, to blot out the word cacophony, which I love to say, that surrounds us and that's become so overwhelming. It often makes it harder to even hear the inner selves, what is speaking to us as we are designing, as we are selling our products. A hushed whisper in a noisy world, Cloud Dancer demonstrates a desire for peace and for clarity. And that really was one of our driving forces in choosing Cloud Dancer. It encourages us also to seek adequate rest that allows us to step away from relentless demands that so many sleep experts tell us is necessary to our well-being. In the home furnishings world, it's a well-understood and necessary hue that provides a comfort level for many consumers. So to say, like you might say about another color, oh, it's so over, we know it's not going to be over with white. When we're reviewing the leading indicators for color of the year, starting with fashion, we found that white was strong in so many sectors. It truly has become a seasonless color, as we certainly can see in these Winter Olympic team members' outfits. They're highly stylized, puffed, as we see in the jackets, or in quilted applications, and accessories that span the seasons. So again, my point is we are so far away from the time, particularly in fashion. Some of the women in the audience will remember this. After Labor Day, there was no white that was worn, and that is definitely an old concept these days. Of course, on a muddy day, I used to live in the Seattle area, you might not want to wear the white shoes or the white boots. The practicality sets in. But nevertheless, we know that it is ubiquitous. It's the cushioning effect that's easily translated into interiors. We saw it in the jackets, we certainly see it in interiors, or in household goods, as the quilting in the placemat, and other furnishings, as we see here. Fashion is also currently featuring white in semi-sheer-like, linen-like fabrics, again, seasonless, particularly as you see it on the tabletop. It's also floaty. That's a word we're seeing often attached to fashion. And when I mention fashion, for those of you who aren't in a fashion field, and obviously you're in home furnishings, we know we have to look at fashion because they always kind of point the finger in the direction of where we're going, particularly as far as fabrication is concerned. So the words floaty, diaphanous, and wispy effects, well adapted to interiors, especially in sheer window coverings, in bedding, in lighting. And this I thought was a particularly interesting image of use of white in lighting. And of course, it's ubiquitous in special events planning as well. When used in the home, it's considered a staple, dependable choice. And when used in clothing, it's an inevitable classic. Now, again, for those who say, but why white is the color of the year, think in terms of the white sneakers, the white t-shirt, all of the things in the home that are white that are simply not going to go away. Let's acknowledge it, but let's think of the reasoning behind it and why a consumer would want it. It's an inevitable classic and a timeless aesthetic. Taking a cue from fashion and film, white is less prone to passing fads than other colors, so it doesn't get dated. Here are two examples that I thought were wonderful. A turtleneck on Patrick Schwarzenegger from the show The White Lotus, and the ubiquitous white t-shirt on Jeremy Allen White. I mean, how fortuitous is that? White Lotus and Jeremy White. Just as in fashion, the beauty category always lends itself to color trends. White eye makeup, white hair, we're seeing a lot of that, and the return of white dragon nails. It's the poster child for simplicity and clarity in messaging and in packaging. Inhale, exhale, repeat. It expresses purity in both design and in product, and it's inevitably connected to minimalism and modernity. And I just had to show this lamp because this is a reproduction of a lamp by Elio Martinelli for Luce, circa 1968. And if you look at it, it looks very forward-thinking, even in the year that we're in now, 1968. So retro vintage is certainly not dead. White serves as a perfect foil for many other tonalities, from the brightest to the lightest, and inevitably to the contrast of black and white. The beauty of Cloud Dancer, it is not a pristine cold white or a yellow-based off-white. It is somewhere in between, equally cool and warm undertones. So if you were to look at a Pantone swatch, you could see, if you are color aware, and obviously you're here to hear my talk, you're very color aware. If you look at this white, it is what we would call the perfect neutral white. And that's what gives it the most versatile tone in the family of whites. Just some examples that you see here. Let me go back one. Many of the future palettes that you're going to be seeing today, that I'm going to be showing you, will be indicative of a palette that could also incorporate the white, so that we know that we have that versatility of the color as we move forward. So with sensibilities, which is our term that we use as a major theme for future direction, we acknowledge that every human, with some exceptions, is capable of physically experiencing the 5 most essential senses. Both personally and professionally, our challenge is to tap into those sensory needs, and color, of course, is a major factor. However, there are other emotional triggers that fall intuitively into the dictionary that we define as a sense of. Notice how many times we say a sense of, and the first one is a sense of joy, whether exuberant or simply satisfying. A great cup of coffee, a glamorous drink done in mauve tones, a hearty meal, just a touch of appealing arrangements on a dark or light background. Pastel or brighter temptations are in clear glass. Presentation and color is key. And I can't make that statement enough, and we know that Peter already mentioned it. I think the actual stats are between 87 and 93% of consumers say that the physical appearance and the color of the object is the reason why they buy a product. The color and design sensibilities that we put into our homes or on our homes help to elicit that comfort zone or happy place we all seek, whether it's chromatic or achromatic, as we see here. Now, achromatic is the term applied to having no color at all, but those of us in the color world know that that's literally impossible. Every object has an undertone that is present, so we may not be aware of the actual tonality when we look at it, but if we compare it to other colors, often the warmth, I'm seeing some body language agreeing, the warmth or the coolness will pop out at us, and we can read the temperature better. Our living spaces give us what is termed a sense of place. For many people, there is a feeling of familiarity and security that is fostered by blending into the natural environment and our surroundings, especially on the exterior. This is very symmetrical in styling, or in an indoor setting where the outdoors is prominently displayed. And here again, we see the outdoors prominently displayed. Not everyone, especially urban dwellers, have a view of foliage and greenery. So when living or working in enclosed areas in windows without a view of greenery, neuroscience, now this is something we all inherently know, but neuroscience has now proven it, that when we are indoors, the use of plants and the scenes of nature, as we see here in the wall covering, and another beautiful scene of nature in the wall covering, and used in a children's room, which I think is particularly charming, and patterning, anything that reminds us of nature when we're indoors reduces a sense of stress. And neuroscience has proved this, so that's a good point you might want to give on to your clients or customers, even if it's just a subtle suggestion. And I thought the plates were a perfect example of that, the subtle use of the tree on the side of the plate. It's still a suggestion that the outdoors is out there and we can take that deep breath of fresh air. In the design world of today and in the future, a sense of place is less defined by using similar periods of styling, and I think most of you are aware of that. This eclectic approach to decorating, where an antique quilt and a sculpted contemporary chair is accented by handcrafted pottery. The key to keeping it all coordinated as ever is color. This vintage metal lamp of the 1960s and the abstract carpet from the 1990s could both add a colorful refresh to a 2027 interior. So again, I'm pointing out, vintage and retro, definitely not dead. And for those of us thinking of 90s as vintage or retro now, seems like it was just here yesterday, right? But here we are looking back, and we're looking into the future with the very same kind of product. The ever-present, here's a great example of something from the past. The ever-present check gingham curtains of the past have been revisited and updated while hitting a nostalgic chord. So again, an important word, the emotionality of the gingham. Does it remind you of Grandma's kitchen? But we're gonna give it a twist, maybe enlarge the gingham checks, but the suggestion's still going to be there. The use of colors and crafts that are indigenous to the area where we love to visit. This is getting very close to home because I live in Tucson. Or where we live, again, an interior that might find itself very happily in Tucson, but in other places if you wanted to create that ambiance. This provides a sense of satisfaction and compatibility within our personal environment. So again, the point is here, if you bring back those areas that brought you comfort, and the same thing applies to your clients, then using touches of what brought you comfort at some point in your life, even if you're not living there anymore. Neuroscience, again, tells us a sense of security. And this is where the sense of style connects with the sense of place that inspire color trends. Our travels might take us from the muted desert tones of Scottsdale to the sophisticated contrast found in a high-rise in Hong Kong. Again, fashion, interior. We might enjoy an espresso surrounded by the classic neutrals of Milano, or view the culturally inspired textures of Johannesburg. We return by way of the American prairie with its grounded, somewhat weather-beaten, hand-hewn, wholesome, and rooted sensibilities. This lifestyle and the others you just viewed, and with more to come in this talk, informs the products that consumers purchase And speaking of consumers, we know they are demanding quality, endurance, and honest value in what they purchased. So for a little bit of nonsense, I had to show you this next image. I couldn't resist it. I hope this isn't a picture of your clients and customers that you're working with, but it's a play on an old theme. This is, of course, not very serious, but it takes us to a much happier place where we get that sense of humor. Again, another sense to tap into. Statistics tell us that selling or featuring products that induce a smile drives high consumer engagement. They are instant attention getters. Now, whether online or at retail, something that induces a smile brings a person in to looking at what you have displayed. Now, this is especially important when bold contrast is used, as you see it here as well. And in the images you're going to see when I get to the 7 palettes, the Pantone palettes, you're going to be seeing suggestions of everything that I'm talking about, but we will put it into place for you. And of course, in exteriors, in murals and such, a sense of humor. Get us to stop, pay attention, smile. We may not agree with it, but still we pay attention. This whimsicality creates what we call now color mischief. A little bit of color mischief isn't a bad thing. In combinations that are unique, and I thought that these 2 images were a perfect example of that. And of course, unexpected. This is definitely unexpected. But what is going to capture the eye? If you were leafing through a magazine, looking online, you would stop dead in your tracks and pay attention. For those who prefer quiet space, and we know a lot of your consumers and customers are, there are always the hush pastels that speak to them and invite a sense of stillness. So another sense is invoked, a sense of stillness, and we find that today that's a very important point. This is where wellness products often find a home with the promise of non-invasive sound that I talked about before, a gentle touch and inviting scents. As we well know, the perfume industry is built on our olfactory senses, and some of the best examples that excite consumer response are based not only on the aromas, but on the packaging as well. I can't talk enough about packaging. When we work with clients at Pantone, we often work with packaging people because we know that is really what helps to glean the attention, not only the product, but what you're putting it in. And of course, the messaging as well. Many products offered today and in future promise a sense of calm, cleansing, lucid clarity, and openness. And I thought that these 2 images were especially good. The openness and transparency is most often shown in acrylics, glass, as the examples here. And I thought these 2 were particularly good. The acrylics, the glass, the resins, the see-through quality, the transparency is also a very important trend as we move forward. Now, this crystallized light, as it's called, sparkling off surfaces, never fails to attract the human eye. I had to show you this. This is a Motorola Razr phone that was partnered with Pantone. And I thought the way that they're packaging it and showing it is just absolutely gorgeous. Little Swarovski crystals in the outside of the phone, and also in the trim that you see here, I thought was a real eye catcher. Again, anything that has that crystallized surface, and here it is in the home. Within the home setting, it's the fractured effect that is gaining most attention in pearlescent and iridescent holographic effects that is also surfacing in wall coverings. The image that you see on your left is actually a wall covering, and on the right, of course, it's in the ceramic tile. Metallic finishes are necessary and a standard in home and housewares, a wide variety of applications. There are warm finishes in everyday objects, the acrylic on the scissors, or woven in elegantly wired effects for lighting. Lighting industry is doing some fabulous things now in making the lights look more like objet d'art, and I thought this was a perfect example of that. We're also seeing, of course, the shiny brass or the classic copper. Never goes away. I never say copper's out. That's a silly thing to say, or brass is out. We know in home and housewares it's ever present, but it's the way that you do it. I think that this highly stylized design is absolutely spectacular. In the cool metallics, as we see here in the serving pieces, there is a broad selection of high gloss, low gloss, and a combination of both. And to transport you home to the kitchen where you can use these implements is soon to be released. And I had to show you this because we always look into it. PCI, we look into what's happening in the world of technology that is going to affect our industries. And this is the electric air taxi that also furnishes the matching luggage, by the way. My point in showing you this is going to be, they say, in the skies in New York in 2027. We'll see if that actually happens, but it is the outer layer that you see combines thermoplastics, carbon fiber, and aluminum that went into this flying vehicle, and this will ultimately make its way into the home, but that's an interesting combination. Thermoplastics, carbon fiber, and aluminum. Now, talking about aluminum, I have to show you this because aluminum has definitely gained traction, but it's the color that's really calling the attention, and I thought these were both fabulous usages of that colored anodized aluminum, especially also because it's 100% recyclable, and that's a big selling point. Engaging our senses of sight and sound, the entertainment industry is always a leading indicator of colors to come. We look first to animation. If you've heard me talk before, you know that I mentioned that. It's absolutely something that I feel is a must-see, even if you don't have kids, because the use of color, the screen animators are absolutely fabulous, and they're always ahead of the curve. Some of the most adventurous color and effects work is being done here. Shrek 5 is coming back, Mike Myers and the cat. It's not just for kids, but you know, the kids are taken to the films by their parents, and it's the parents who watch along with them, and it's the parents who pay for the accompanying merch that is produced as a result of the film. The number one, this blew me away when I found this out, the number one most watched show ever on Netflix is about a girl singing group who moonlight as demon hunters. The color effects are really magical. This film is out now, and there will be a sequel coming up in a couple of years. So I talk about sequels because this extends the shelf life. If you have a sequel and they're going to be incorporating much of the same color and integrating some new colors into it, that's a great way, it's a great clue, something to look at that helps to bring the color story to light. And these, as I said, these color effects in this picture are absolutely magical. Reviewers have called it beautifully done, a film that is artistically animated and thoughtful at the same time. This is what the reviewer said. And although it was released this year, as I mentioned, there is a sequel coming up, and I think the use of color in this film was really fabulous. From demons to devils, we know that this long-awaited sequel will be hugely popular because it's all about the glamour and intrigue of the fashion industry. Can you believe it's been 20 years since the first one came out? I read that and I thought, it can't be 20 years. It was photographed mostly in New York on the street, and it stopped traffic wherever it was being filmed. People absolutely loved the story. Now, again, I'm telling you this because millions of eyes all over the world will be watching the colors that are within this film, and it's bound to have an effect. It's The Devil Wears Prada, and it's number 2. Miranda and Emily are now rivals, each wearing their power black outfits. The scenes, as I said, are shot in Manhattan with a main characters that are in varying colors to suit the mood or the occasion. They did a fabulous job with that. This is Miranda at the Met Gala with her blazing red gown, or off to a meeting with Nigel in corporate neutrals. So you see that contrast in the film. It's coming out in May, by the way. Here is Emily in her off hours in a multicolored Mondrian print And at the opposite extreme, the all-white, white again, outfit. We did keep our eyes on what was happening in the upcoming films. And Miranda, in unique color mix that is very much like the colors featured in our most recent fashion color forecast. Now, when I say our recent color forecast, this is Pantone's fashion color forecast. We do it twice a year. We watch what's coming down the runways, but well before it's on the runway, to indicate to us what colors are going to be shown, and then we rate them, the top 10, and then also the top 6 that are the neutrals, the basics, and the staples. And I'm going to bring this up so I can show it to you very quickly. You can go on the Pantone site, and you will see all the Pantone colors that are being used. This is, I believe, the fall picture for this year, and it also includes the seasonless colors. The Avengers sequels invariably influence fashion. I thought this was great. This is when we started to see those deep forest greens come into play. In beauty and interiors as well, the Avengers with that kind of dark, sinister feeling, and it's getting even darker and more mysterious, like Secret Wars, which is the next Avengers film that's slated for 2027. So again, looking ahead, you're going to see a lot of the black leather, the heavy use of metal, particularly the darkened silvers. From film to still photography, there is a sensory language that connects the senses through color. The earthy tones in the surround in this picture are grounded and real, while the arching lilacs add grace and beauty that offer the suggestion of a sweet scent. The multi-sensory approach is very effective within art, photography, advertising that you might do on your website. Not only is this an unexpected color for an everyday utility product, it promises a citrus scent as a top note. And very cleverly, they put in that little piece of orange to tell you that. So what is this saying? It means that it's getting the prospective consumer even more excited because you've got several senses that are all working at the same time. And when you can do that, it leads to a more successful sale. More than one sense, not just the sense of eyes, but the suggestion of other senses. An ongoing trend is the art of the mundane, taking the silliness of every day and turning it into art, the art of the mundane, where ordinary objects, as you just saw, are transformed into pop art. And I thought this was particularly wonderful. They found an old sign from a restaurant, put it on top of the Airstream, and a little picket fence and a bicycle, and somebody actually lives in that space, but it was turned into pop art as well. This quirky approach, as we call it, is especially appealing to the younger demographic. Lego partnered with Crocs, spawned this red brick clog, and it's sold out in a matter of weeks. Now, we look at it and think, particularly at a certain age, who can walk in these things? But it's sold out in a matter of weeks, and I will bet you it was mostly to the younger demographic that happened. So in both product and in packaging, red packs a punch at point of purchase. I don't have to tell you that, but I just thought this was so brilliant. Why didn't they think of this before that? Can you imagine the French fries so that you can dip them into the ketchup? Now, Heinz did produce various colors of ketchup in the early 2000s as they were losing market share because of new competition, particularly the market labels that came out in ketchups. Adding more colors brought a great deal of media attention. Name of the game, media attention. They regained market share. Eventually, they opted to stay with their standard brand color. They went back to that. But the green and the purple ketchup did sell even more than their red the first few years that it came out because people were absolutely captured by it. Some people would say that's disgusting. Who's going to eat green ketchup, right? But nevertheless, it caught so much attention in the press, and now they've gone back to their bright red. As we well know, color and technology has come a long way in the history of housewares. My goodness, I look at this iron, this flat iron, and I think what women used to have to go through. Can you imagine ironing and think of our irons today that practically iron themselves? In the words of the iconic designer Werner Pantone, not Pantone, choosing colors should not be a gamble, it should be a conscious decision. Colors have a meaning and a function, and we certainly couldn't agree more. Color forecasting is not crystal ball gazing or relying on our sixth sense. It's a pragmatic gathering of information, research, and influences that provide informed guidance for the future. So, to put all of the imagery that you've just seen, the suggestions that were made, into a sensory perspective, let's take a look at each of the 7 Pantone palettes. Now, before I show you the palettes, I'm going to urge you to visit the Pantone exhibit because John DeFrancesco, put your hand up, John, our brilliant graphic artist who designs those panels every year, and the merchandise, the product that supports the palettes are absolutely fabulous. Take your time to walk around and to talk to our great people at the Pantone booth who will help to answer some questions, because obviously you're seeing this all within like 50 minutes. It's a lot to absorb, and I think if you visit the exhibit, you'll be able to absorb more of what you see. Okay, so here we go into the 7 palettes. Going back to some of the things that I mentioned, the first one is called Delight, and it continues on with the pastel tints and airy hues under a sunny sky. Now, you might say, well, we've seen pastels before, so how do we reinvent this? We know that with colored trends, in order to keep the consumer's interest, they may already have some of these pastels, perhaps in their dinnerware. But to put a color into that, involve a color that maybe tweaks them a little bit. Gee, I never thought about using that lavender and mauve with a yellow. Maybe I have to think about that. When they look at what's available to them and you present that to them, that's the newness that creates the reasoning, the rationale for reaching out and buying it. Now, the second one is called Allure, dramatic, elegant, glamorous tones and undertones, the kinds of things that are inspired by the films that I just mentioned to you, the Avenger films, Devil Wears Prada, and so on. Lucid, clarity, transparency, rejuvenating, contrasting tones. Now, this tone, this particular palette, because it has all that lucid quality that's mentioned, the title of it, we know we're going to expect that there are a certain amount of blues and greens that are involved in here, but that feeling of transparency that I talked about before is really an important element as you look at a palette like this. So let's think of the materials that we use as well as the color. Quiet, light, and muted midtones, the cacophony that I talked about earlier. How do we quiet that? How do we get rid of it? We call this palette Hush. And for many people, this will be what they're going to select because they want the quiet. And next we have our warm and comforting hues. This is something like coming back to the prairie that I showed you before in my images. Warm and comforting hues. And we certainly see an example of that here. But again, a little bit of a difference in what we see in this palette. I don't know that on the screen you can see it as well, but I thought in the merchandise surrounding the exhibits that we have in the main concourse, you're going to be seeing the use of mauve. It's not a bad word anymore, mauve or mauve, however you pronounce it, and it's absolutely gorgeous with some of these warm and comforting hues. Take a look at that because it really helps to extend your imagination into a new direction. And of course, there is the grounded palette, organic shadings, varietal earth tones. That is not really absolutely new. We know that the earth tones have been around, but again, how do we mix those colors? What do we put in that's a little unexpected that makes the consumer stop and say, yes, I need to add that particular product, primarily because they like the color. And this palette is called Elation, a vibrant and joyful collection of energetic hues. You absolutely have to have a palette that has these fun colors, the sense of joy. And again, it's all in the mix. I'm going to point out particularly that shade of green that's second from the top, that kind of Kellyish green that we have been seeing creeping up in the green family. Very, very important within this palette, as are the other colors, and you will see that when you look at the displays. Okay, so that brings us to the color watch board, which is my last image. I've thrown a lot at you in a short period of time. I thank you so much for your attention today, and again, I'm going to urge you to take a visit to the Pantone booth, and if anybody has any questions, please come up and ask me at the end of the talk. I'll be here, and I'd be happy to answer the questions, and then we're going to go up to the booth again. Thank you so much for your kind attention today. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lee Eiseman.
Thank you.
Thank you for yet another full house for Lee's presentation. Who's coming back next year? There we go. All right. Okay, we'll see you all. Enjoy the rest of the Inspired Home Show. We'll see you next time. Stop by the Pantone Color Watch booth. Visit the halls. Lots of inspiration out there, folks. Take care now.